Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name's Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is leading aircraft woman Grace Speeder. Today marks the centenary of the Battle of Messines in Belgium. Today, we remember all those who died in the Battle of Messines, whose names are recorded here on the Roll of Honour. We will recall the story of just one today, Lance Corporal Albert Henry Bewley of the 45th Battalion Australian Imperial Force, who was killed in action during the Battle of Messines on the 7th of June 1917. We warmly welcome the families of those who are involved in the Battle of Messines. We also welcome Mr John King, ACT President of the Return and Services League of Australia. We're honoured to welcome Mr John Thomas, President of the 45th Battalion Association, and Mr Graham Lambert of the Royal Australian Engineers Association. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family, visitors and students on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, Cranbrook Preparatory School, Rose Bay, and Pendle Hill Public School, Wentworthville. Australia's Federation Guard is a tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catapult party from around the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier. I now invite to the lectern the Director of the Australian War Memorial, the Honourable Dr. Brendan Nelson.
Students of Pendle Hill and Cranbrook, ladies and gentlemen, visitors to the memorial. As you walk out of the First World War galleries, you would not possibly have missed the magnificent sculpture by Gilbert Dobell called Winged Victory. The woman with the beautiful face of Nike, a sword held above her and a laurel wreath in her other hand down by her side. In that semi-darkened room are 6 displays. One of them, you may recall, is a photograph of a young soldier with his wife in her Sunday best and 3 young children sitting in front of them. His name is John Stannon Luff. The love of his life, Ruby, is his wife, and the 3 children are Eric, Ron and May. In a beautiful, lightly wooded forest, in a place called Toronto Avenue, Messines, the French-speaking part of Belgian Flanders, is a small cemetery. There are 78 headstones in that cemetery. They are all Australians, with an Australian Army rising sun on them. At the end of the first of the 3 rows is the headstone for the man in the photograph in our galleries here, John Stannon Luff. He was the groundkeeper at the Fremantle Cricket Ground. He and Ruby and their 3 children lived under the grandstand. He enlisted in January 1916. He wrote 11 letters to Ruby before he was killed 100 years ago today at Messines. He is, as I said, one of the 78 Australians buried there. And today we will remember another one of them, and in particular we commemorate one of the most important battles in which Australians were engaged during the First World War. 100 years ago today, on the 7th of June 1917, the Battle of Messines began with the detonation of 19 huge underground mines that had been secretly placed deep under the German front lines by British, Australian and Canadian tunnelling units over the previous year. This created the largest man-made explosion to that time and resulted in massive destruction to the German frontline positions, with as many as 10,000 Germans estimated to have been killed. So loud were the explosions they were heard in London. 9 divisions of the British Second Army, including 2 Australian divisions, then advanced to seize the strongly held German positions on the Messines Ridge, south of the city of Ypres. The battle-hardened 4th Australian Division, together with the 3rd Australian Division under Major General Sir John Monash, our greatest general, entering battle for the first time, assaulted with the support of artillery, aircraft and tanks. They overwhelmed the stunned German defenders in their strongholds, as did the British formations to the north, and captured all of their objectives within 6 hours. Messines is generally regarded as one of the greatest set-piece victories of the war, but it was still immensely costly, with losses almost equal on both sides. Of the 26,000 total British casualties, more than half were incurred by the Anzac Corps, the 2 Australian divisions together suffering 7,000 casualties, and the New Zealand division almost 5,000. German casualties are estimated at 25,000, including more than 7,000 German missing. The capture of the Messines Ridge left the way open for Allied forces to begin the long-planned assault into Flanders, to drive the German forces from their dominant ground and sweep towards the Belgian coast to seize the vital ports. This major offensive, now known as the Third Ypres Campaign, would drag on for 4 months, from the end of July to mid-November 1916. and would cost the British Army approximately 275,000 casualties, including 70,000 dead. Among them were 38,000 Australian casualties, including 12,000 Australian dead. Today we remember all of those who died in the Battle of Messine and whose names are recorded here on the Roll of Honour. We will recall the story of just one today, Lance Corporal Albert Henry Bewley of the 45th Battalion, Australian Imperial Force, who was killed in action today 100 years ago at the Battle of Messine along with John Stannon Luff. And to the young people that are here and who may be watching it, the word paradox means that there is an inherent contradiction in either the word or the statement. This place is called the Australian War Memorial, but it's not actually about war. It's in a context of war. But this place, this story you are about to hear, is one of love and friendship. Love for friends, love between friends, love of family, and love of our country. And it's honouring men and women whose lives are devoted not to themselves, but to us, and their last moments to one another.
Thank you, Director. Could I ask you to all please stand and join in singing the National Anthem?
Manifold Party attention! Manifold Party present arms.
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is earth by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts, of beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Manifold Party shoulder arms.
Students, you may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this National Museum and Memorial came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations over more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lance Corporal Albert Henry Bewley. Fondly known as Jack, Albert Bewley was born in 1879 in Blackney Creek, New South Wales, to the large family of William and Caroline Bewley. He attended Mullengrove Public School before going on to work as a labourer in the Cowra district. Bewley enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in August 1915. He travelled to the enlistment office in Lithgow with his nephew Sidney Bewley. The pair joined together, saying they were brothers in the hope that they would be able to stay together. Jack was 36 years old and Sidney 21. They left Australia together in December 1915 with reinforcements to the 30th Battalion. Jack and Sidney Bewley arrived in Egypt in January 1916. Almost immediately, both were hospitalised with the mumps. During this period of time, the AIF was undergoing a period of expansion and reorganisation. When Jack was discharged from hospital in March, he was transferred to the 45th Battalion. When Sidney left hospital, he remained with the 30th Battalion, and the two never served together again. The 45th Battalion arrived in France to fight on the Western Front in June 1916. 2 months later, it entered the front line near the French village of Pozières. On the 8th of August, Private Jack Bewley suffered wounds to his back and spine and was evacuated to hospital in England. His wounds were not serious, however, and he was fit enough to rejoin his battalion in the field a month later. The 45th Battalion spent a bitterly cold winter of 1916 to 1917, rotating in and out of the front line. In March, Bewley was promoted to Lance Corporal. Later that month, Sidney was killed in action during the occupation of Bapaume. He was 22 years old. Jack Bewley remained in the 45th Battalion, largely spending his time training and holding the front line until his next major action at the Battle of Messines. At 3:10 p.m. on the 7th of June, 1917, the 45th Battalion launched its attack at Messines, meeting heavy opposition from concreted enemy strongpoints. Only some of its objectives were taken that day. Others would be taken in the days to come. Lance Corporal Bewley led his section into the attack. While he succeeded in capturing his objectives, he was killed in action during the battle. His friend, Second Lieutenant McDarmond, later wrote, "The pity of it all was the price, the loss of such a brave soldier who had proved himself time and again." Bewley's body was never recovered, and today he is commemorated on the Menin Gate Memorial to the Missing. He was 37 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour to my right, among more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lance Corporal Albert Henry Bewley, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Manifold Party present arms.
lest,
Whole party showed her arms.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Whole party out. Words. Turn. Whole party quick. March.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.